Everybody, welcome to the Squanch, Wisecrack's Rick and Morty podcast. My name is Jared, and I'm joined here with the Squanchers. We got Alec.
Hey.
And we got Ryan.
What's up, everybody?
And today we are breaking down Rick and Morty Season 4, Episode 7, Primordius. As always, we're going to go around and see what people thought about this episode. Last time we started with Alex, so this time let's start with Ryan. Ryan, what did you think about this episode?
Right when I thought Rick and Morty was dead, the nail was in the coffin, it was over, just get this show out of here. It's outlived its run. They come back and give us, what was the name of this episode?
Promortyus.
Promortyus, man. I loved it. I was really laughing. Like, it gave me everything I didn't get last episode and more. I mean, I was cracking up multiple times during it. I wrote down a bunch of my favorite jokes. I thought that the story was really smart and fun, just like a good Rick and Morty, It had the whole kind of time loop circle aspect to it, which was really fun. And yeah, like how many good jokes were in this thing? Like the whole, I'm sorry I didn't 9/11 Pearl Harbor before breakfast. Jerry Smith, what a great line. I cracked up. I'm 14, I jack off, I own it. Morty Smith, what a funny conversation that was. So many just great gags, great lines. The momentum of the story was there. Cinematically, it was amazing. The action was like, and effects and gore and violence was all top notch. Rick and Morty. They even, as a cherry on top, came back at the end and almost apologized for overthinking last week's episode, which was the main criticism. I can't tell if they if they like pre-wrote that or if they did that after the reactions. Either way, it's great. And shots fired. They even took shots at our own podcast, saying that it's boring, or that all podcasting is boring.
Podcasts are boring.
And I'm sure they were specifically talking about this one and how we were shitting on their show. But it's okay. Even with that, I love this episode. A+ from Rick and Morty from me. I just want to say we got an email this morning, and I didn't sleep a whole lot, so I'm like a little whatever. But the email was like, "Love the podcast, even though I find it boring," and I didn't make the connection. I was like, "Well, that's kind of mean." Nice. But now I realized, oh right, they were just making a joke.
Yeah, Alec, what do you think?
I want to give this episode like an A-. I agree with
Blasphemy.
Ryan. It was very funny, and I don't often laugh out loud at things. And again, because I'm very tired, I watched it this morning for the first time, and the 9/11 joke happened, and I was like, "Wait, what's happening?" So I rewound it, 15 seconds, and I just started cracking up out loud. It was amazing, and it just kept going. And then the callback at the breakfast table, so good. I love Rick's shitty YouTube channel, essentially.
Yeah.
And how like he's a weird kind of we can get to that later. Love the jokes about the Serial podcast. I think is specifically what they're making fun of. I mean all podcasts, obviously. Yeah, and the full circle from the pilot, just putting something up their ass, shitting right back out, and Morty's Pornhub account. What's not to love?
That was great too. Yeah.
I also just, I think I like the theme. Like, I think the theme, it's not amazingly genius or anything, but I do just like the general theme of, there's this trope of the face hugger, or just like parasites in general as these kind of zombies that are okay to kill. What if they were an actually advanced species? That
face hugger industrialists. Yeah.
Yeah, face hugger industrialist. And so I thought that was like a nice little subversion that I think worked and was really funny.
Yeah, I think this was also a pretty refreshing episode in contrast to last episode. I laughed quite a number of times. I would give this episode probably a B+. The one thing that I'm missing is I'm missing Jerry. I'm missing Jerry, and some of my favorite parts were just...
by Summer's a best friend or whatever.
Yeah, he's going to do an American Beauty, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
Especially since, was it the last episode where he said, maybe Dad... Oh, no. It was in Snake Jazz. He's like, Dad's off having an affair, and then everyone just starts laughing.
Honestly,
this episode...
oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say this episode, I think, had, similar to Alec, I also kind of liked the themes that it was going for. Interestingly, this is I think the first episode of, no, not the first episode of the season, but it's another episode where there's only an A plot, there's no B plot, which isn't necessarily a criticism or a piece of praise, but I really like the, yeah, I really like the whole progress versus biology thing that they kind of hint at throughout the episode. I kind of wish that was dramatized a little bit more, but we can talk about that. But yeah, funny, not overly thought out, not overwritten like last episode. Overall, good return to form. Those super badass suits were super badass.
Yes.
And just like some of those parts are my favorite. The Pickle Rick committing mass murder action sequences are just so cool. Anyway, let's go into a recap of this episode. Rick and Morty escape the binds of face-hugging aliens that have been possessing them for an unknown period of time. By duct taping the now dead huggers on their face, they're able to go undercover and discover the whole planet is bound by faith in an entity called Glorzo, of which Morty's hugger is a vocal supporter. Upon discovering their plan to bring Glorzo to Earth, Rick and Morty thwart their plan, reclaim their ship, and pull a Pearl Harbor before leaving the planet. They then realize Summer is still somewhere on the devastated planet, so they head back, cause more indiscriminate destruction, and discover Summer being worshipped as the Empress. She orders Rick and Morty be incarcerated and reveals that when Rick and Morty landed with her on the planet and were possessed by their facehuggers, she evaded all the facehuggers with a toothpick and convinced all the facehugger people not to live for 30 minutes, shit eggs, and die, and instead to continue living, thus starting a new progressive world order. Rick and Morty's facehuggers fall in love and plan to have a family together when an accident allows them to escape, bringing us to the beginning of the episode. Summer tries to trick the facehuggers into letting them all escape, but when their cover is blown, Rick and Morty opt instead to make them all shit eggs and die with the sound of a harmonica. The group heads back home to watch some interdimensional cable when Rick and Morty think they're about to shit an egg and die, but end up just shitting on the carpet. End of episode.
You know, we got one really good comment that I just want to point out, which is that there is a B plot. There's Jerry's B plot.
Oh shit!
I mean, but it's not really a plot. He doesn't.
It's a B
pun.
plot.
I'm making a pun.
A B plot, Jared.
Because he tends bees.
Plot.
Thank you.
Duh.
All right, got it. I deserve all the the shame for that one. So one thing I wanted to talk about, as I mentioned earlier, this kind of progress versus biology thing, and this is the one thing that just blows by really quickly, and I'm a little bit torn as to whether I wanted this to be dramatized a little bit more, or if they should just blow by it, because, I mean, last episode we were complaining that it was almost like too dense. So it's like Rick's facehugger is this Alex Jones type vlogger who preaches the gospel of living for 30 minutes, shitting an egg, and then dying. And then Morty's is a prominent follower of Summer's kind of Glorzo separatism / progressivism. Because whenever Summer suggests that everybody not shit an egg and die and instead continue living, then you see them rolling out these city plans and they erect all these skyscrapers and everything seems to be great. They've got that awesome Glorzo song, which is actually my favorite part of the episode. is the song. And then Rick's facehugger is, I guess, saying, no, our biology says that we should just live for 30 minutes, shit an egg, and die. And I suppose that's where this internal conflict brews between the Morty facehugger and the Rick facehugger, but all of that is established in this montage, and then it ends with the scene where the two of them confront each other about, she stole you away from me, and then they start making out, which is a very cringy, awkward scene, but
like in a good way.
But in a good way, yeah.
It made me deeply uncomfortable, but I liked it.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. I don't know, what did you guys think about this? It was a lot that was established very quickly, and I also am just still not entirely clear about what Glorzo is, or who is Glorzo.
Glorzo is peace, dude.
Yeah, come on.
So it's just an idea.
Yeah, I think I was trying to think of like if there's a specific 1-to-1 for Rick, like Alex Jones, and I don't think there's this like. I think it kind of encompasses a lot of kind of talking heads, especially on the internet. I mean, it comes down to kind of like the naturalistic fallacy, which is the idea that because something's in nature, it is like good or preferable. And so, I mean, like if we go back in time, and I'm sure this argument still pops up, if, nature or God wanted like two dudes to like get married, he would have like let them have babies out of their butt or something like that. So it's like, why are our bodies designed to reproduce this way? Don't do it that unnatural way. But also like, men and women, like, if why do women need to do this if they're biologically XYZ? That happens all the way. It also happens with like kind of like trans issues, like people, like it's the most common talking point to be like, I'm sorry that basic biology kind of offends you. And I think they're just quickly making fun of that because, again, it is like this naturalistic fallacy. And also I think it plays really well in the episode because you have this like basic, like terrible, shitty 30-minute life of just getting on a host and shitting out an egg. If we think about that in terms of our own society, like obviously natural human existence pre-civilization is fucking terrible. We're dying, we're getting murdered all the time, but you'll still hear people like evolutionary psychologists being like, well, listen, like rape is kind of programmed into our brain, so like it can't be that bad, or like, it's natural, so like whatever.
Wait, who says that?
Oh yeah, no, not all evolutionary psychologists, but I have seen evolutionary psychologists kind of try to like apologize for rape, saying like it's a reproductive strategy and this and that. Evolutionary psychology is full of a bunch of shitheads.
Whoa.
Anyway,
we're gonna get some emails about that one.
Yeah, but anyway, like we live in this society that's so divorced from like the natural world, but we like to pick and choose the ones that are like, well, this is unnatural, even though it's unnatural to sit in front of a camera and, Zoom with people and live in an apartment with clean drinking water and all of this stuff. But we'll randomly point to one thing, like two dudes marrying, and be like, that's unnatural. And I think that's kind of what's happening with this joke.
I personally really liked and appreciated how truncated that this supposed, this thing that could have been extrapolated throughout an entire episode, this idea, and how they just did it in a song montage. I didn't have to see the whole buildup of his Alex Jones channel and all of them debating this issue for me to just totally get it once, or get what they were trying to go for and what they were satirizing as it was happening. And that, to me, that was enough. But you're right. That it totally was a good idea for that could have been expounded upon more.
Yeah, I would say I mostly agree with you, Ryan. I guess the one thing I was missing is like I would have liked to feel a little bit more emotional catharsis when Morty's facehugger and Rick's facehugger decide to make out and put their differences aside. Because when I was watching the episode for the first time, I wasn't even entirely clear on what their differences were for that first time. It was only until the second time I watched it that I was like, oh, okay, this is how they were ideologically pulled apart because of Summer's arrival and Summer's progressive movement, et cetera, et cetera. But
you're totally right that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that scene, like momentum-wise, did kind of come not out of nowhere, but it wasn't as built up as some of the other scenes, or earned as some of the other scenes. Because you're right, it is kind of. It happens so abruptly. They just start making out, in this scene, and you're like, wait a minute. And then I didn't rewatch the whole episode, but I did back it up about 10 seconds and kind of go, okay, I kind of got the context. So it is a weird scene.
So, Alec, I have a question for you. So, in the Unity episode, the inhabitants are given freedom, and then the show playfully points out the downsides of freedom. And I kind of wish they had done the same here with the idea of progress, but things kind of just blow by. Do you think that there's anything akin to that, like any kind of criticism of something that we usually take as something unilaterally good?
Sorry, I don't think that us or the people could hear that question, Jerry.
Yeah,
Can you repeat that?
I think he was just asking if there's any criticism of sort of progress in this episode. I don't know. I think it is interesting that the progress is still built on this horrific notion that they're facehuggers and they're parasitic organisms that like enslave sentient beings, you know? So like all their
Yeah.
progress. And then my whole question is, what's the deal with like the space gun laser thing? Was that Summer's plot to get back to Earth? Were they going to enslave Earth? And so I think they leave it kind of ambiguous, like, is it peace or is it some weird enslavement cult that is also like progressive or whatever?
Yeah,
Um,
the
yeah,
giant dick spaceship with dick and balls.
yeah,
Classic Rick and Morty. Yeah,
Classic Rick and Morty.
again, the first time I saw it, I did think it was to destroy Earth, and then the second time I watched it, don't they say that it's to bring Glorzo to Earth?
yeah. Is Glorzo Morty? Like, I don't know.
See,
What
that's what I
Glorzo
was
is.
confused about.
Yeah,
No, I don't think Glorzo is Morty. I think Morty or Morty's facehugger is basically just the antithesis of Rick, somebody who's just totally on board with Summer's separatist progressive movement, and he writes about it and is basically her biggest fan, kind of, or her biggest supporter. I said, but I was also confused when I saw the magazine cover that had Glorzo and then Morty's face on it, and I thought, oh, does that mean that Morty is Glorzo? But no, I think it's just that he's some sort of prominent pro-Glorzo politician or something.
and Glorzo is like the
Yes.
the hive, not the it's not a hive mind, but it's the species or something.
I don't know. When you guys just said simply that it was peace, I was like, okay, maybe that's just all. That's as far as we're supposed to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of him being peace, the first time big laugh I got was when was after they pass up the 9/11, and then Rick is like, and then they Pearl Harbor it, and he goes, "I am the god of death." How awesome was that?
That was pretty good.
Anyone else laugh? Okay, good.
Was that like a Oppenheimer reference, or what? Wasn't it? He
Oh.
said, "I." Well, he says, "I am become death, destroyer of all worlds." When he saw the first nuclear test, or
The
something like
Ozymandias
that.
or something.
But
I think that's from
no.
that it's not Hindu. Like that Indian text. I am become death. It's from something that he didn't invent that. Oh, the Bhagavad Gita is the text.
Okay, but am I right in saying that Oppenheimer quoted that text?
Yeah, about him making nukes and stuff.
Okay, that's what came to my mind. But even then, it's not a direct quote.
Yeah, but it's like pop and bubble wrap.
Did you guys think that when Summer is describing the two of them making out, that she had just made that up, or are we supposed to take it as if it really happened?
I want to believe it happened.
Yeah,
I want
me
to believe
too.
it happened. I want to believe it happened too. But at the end, after that flashback, Morty's like, "Wait, you weren't even there for that last part. How do you know?" And she's like, "Oh, well, it's easy to fill in the blanks. Everybody knows about." And then she named the names of Rick and Morty's facehugger, which is like Robert and Sam or something like that.
I also like that joke because especially, well, first, the structure of the episode, it goes back in time and kind of recontextualizes the first scene, but then rewatching it, I want it to be true because like in that scene they want to go start a family and they're carrying their eggs before Morty rips off his and then they murder them. And so not only that scene, but also just rewatching the episode in general, I have so much more like empathy for these facehuggers. And if that was made up, I feel like I would have a little less empathy.
Yeah, and of course that empathy is just torn to shreds when they get their badass suits on and just keep killing everything indiscriminately. I want to ask you about, so they have this joke about heroic destruction in, specifically they call out Star Wars, but I think you can just as easily say it about most superhero movies. What do you guys think about this joke? I'm wondering if this joke is getting kind of old, but then maybe it's just because we talk about it a lot. We talk about it a lot, like how in Man of Steel or even Avengers 2, there's just so much destruction going on. And then, of course, some Marvel movies have even written that into the plot, where in Captain America Civil War, Iron Man has to answer for all the destruction he created in Avengers 2, etc. Same thing with Batman v Superman. What did you guys think?
Same joke, but it felt true and authentic to the story they were telling, So I didn't mind it, but I did make a mental note of it, like, oh yeah, we've kind of talked about that before.
I think there's a little bit of it's similar, but I think there's a little bit of a difference in that oftentimes the joke is on like collateral damage, and this is specifically like this evil alien race is disposable, which it complicates again by showing like it's weird because I was reading the subreddit this morning, the Rick and Morty one, where kind of people were just talking about like are the facehuggers evil? Like this is just their biological imperative, right? You can't necessarily call like a lion evil for eating its prey or whatever. Also kind of like a naturalistic whatever. But and so it's hard to be I don't know, like I like that it makes you kind of feel bad about how glibly or like how gleefully you enjoy like watching them get massacred. Especially like as we see their sort of love lives later. So I thought that was interesting. I don't think things do that, right? Like maybe Star Wars has done this, but when we see stormtroopers die, we're like, fuck that fucking asshole,
Well, they're evil. They're clearly evil. That's what's so funny about this or just how Rick and Morty approaches all this stuff is that, yeah, in reality, if you really think about it, they are serial mass murderers, because they basically just are like, oh shit, we got lost. We're on another planet. How are we going to get out of this? And they just, they have no regard for the lives, the people, everything that's happening to these, sentient beings on this planet. They're just like, well, how do we get home? I guess we got to create a god, kill a bunch of people, and just, so we can get to dinner on time. It's the banality of evil incarnate. This family is.
Yeah, but to Alex's point, when does that happen in Star Wars? Because yeah, you could say that the Empire will destroy Alderaan or whatever, but most of the visual cues in the episode, when Morty goes down to the bottom level of the ship and he starts shooting people, that's a callback to things that Luke Skywalker's done, and then I'm sure it's been done in the new trilogy. I think it has. I think Finn does it, where he's shooting people with the ray guns and doing a 360 degrees around the ship. Yeah. We don't really see that happening in Star Wars because they're always just fighting the Empire. There's not really a lot of disposable alien species that at least the good guys are killing in Star Wars. Well,
I mean, it's not species, but the disposable people are the stormtrooper, which I guess maybe they're complicating because Finn is a good guy and he was like able to escape the cult of stormtroopers or whatever. But yeah, I mean, this is the joke on the subreddit Empire Did Nothing Wrong, which is that like the rebels are this horrible terrorist organization that killed thousands of innocent people that were just like doing like boring administrative, like the janitor on the Death Star had a family, and what the fuck is wrong with you? That kind of shit. But yeah, I also think like this is gonna sound really wonky. Like in sci-fi, there's just the trope of like the evil parasite race, and I don't think it's ever. We always assume that like if some race is parasitic like that, they're going to be dumb and like not worthy of like the same sort of respect that like a chimpanzee or any of the cute animals do. And this one's like, but what if they're also industrialist?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that the source of the title of the episode is Prometheus, where I think that if anything, we see that the facehuggers are able to build a real society, and actually that like the facehuggers are like ground zero of the biology of something that ends up creating these aliens that are at least smart enough to kill a bunch of humans. And then, gosh, I don't really remember the movies that well. Ryan, do you remember if in Alien Covenant we see that society that quickly gets destroyed, but that's not birthed from the aliens, right? That's those like pale white guys, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. It would make more sense. It would be more of a one-to-one for this episode if they were created by the aliens. So yeah.
But we still have the joke of everybody likes to make fun of the movie Prometheus because the characters are so stupid that they'll go up to these eggs and be like, "Ooh, I wonder what this is," or they see a little monster come out of the eggs and they're just like, "Oh, come on, pretty baby, come closer," and then of course they get it on their face and they die. And so I think that's echoed with Rick and Morty saying, "Oh, it's a wet egg. I really love this wet egg. Oh, like maybe you should." And then Summer will say, "You shouldn't probably get that close to a wet egg," and they're like, "Oh, fuck you, Summer, you shouldn't even be here." And then of course it all goes to shit. Can we talk about Jerry? Even though he's in this episode for a very short amount of time,
he's political now.
No, that was Rick that's political now.
Oh, shit, sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
It talks about Saudi Arabia. No, but Jerry, he's been getting into beekeeping lately. I love that he's doing something relatively manly outside with his hands. This is something
relatively manly.
Yeah,
I'm not
even hating on beekeeping, but like in the like stereotypical like what is and isn't manly. I wouldn't put beekeeping even on that spectrum. Like I'm not like,
I put a weird.
You gotta
nerdy.
fuck around with bees, man.
That's less manly. That's more like weird garden nerd person.
And garden nerds rule. I don't want to shit on garden nerds.
I'm not shitting on them at all. I'm just contrasting.
But like
it to
compared
manly.
to Cronenberg Jerry, which is like quote unquote like real, I'm a man. This is just like, I don't know. It's a cool hobby, but also kind of dorky, so you can make fun of it.
Yeah.
But I love, and this is a very small detail, but when Rick and Morty are trying to make up an excuse for where Summer is, Jerry isn't even listening. His eyes are closed, and he's just relishing the taste of the honey on his pancakes, just relishing the fruits of his labor. So self-satisfied. It's just such a nice Jerry moment that we don't really often get to see him that content with himself.
Yeah.
To be honest, I didn't even notice that. I need to rewatch that soon.
I hope...
I look very close whenever Jerry's on screen.
Yeah. I hope I hope Jerry has an affair with Summer's friend.
Yes, me too.
Maybe becomes like a really famous beekeeper and like becomes very successful and self-actualized. But again, like his biggest success is still like kind of nerdy and made fun of Rick. I think that would be like a really good development in the story.
Which, by the way, can we talk about Summer's friend for a second? Because she seems to be like one of the hot popular girls. Is there at some point in the lore of the story, did Summer like obtain this sense of permanent popularity? I mean, I know like early on, Mr. Meeseeks got her popular, but then that seemed to have gone away. But when did she land this attractive friend?
Is it? Well, I know. I don't know if it's the same friend, but friends that look like this are in the Snake Jazz episode. Listening to did Snake Jazz make her popular?
I don't know. I would love to see back at school what's going on with Summer.
Yeah.
Because isn't that same girl? I don't know her name, but she's friends with Jessica.
I'm not sure.
Haven't we seen them together? I feel like I saw them talking together at the end of the first episode of this season, where Jessica is telling everybody that when she grows up, she wants to be a hospice person who tells everybody that she loves them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So anything else you guys want to bring up before we go into the mailbag?
I loved another Summer line I loved is when she goes, "You don't know anything about my story."
Yeah, she's got a lot of stank on some of the way that she reads her lines.
And then let's see. We just gotta shit eggs and die. We love it. Yeah, I'm good.
I like this is the YouTube thing. Did he at least sell vitamins or something? Which is
that's why I thought it was an Alex Jones thing.
Yeah, I think it's Alex Jones and people like Alex Jones. Like I think there's a broad umbrella because also every time I look into like a weird anti-vaxxer, they're always selling vitamins. So I think right. Selling vitamins is what you do when you just spout weird shit on the internet and can't get like normal sponsors.
You need a replacement for the vaccine. You need the vitamins. Duh.
Yeah. Okay. The only thing I wanted to bring up, and again, this is just like someone was complaining about this on the subreddit, but I don't even necessarily agree with it. But I did encounter. Have you guys heard the term Flanderization?
revealing
like
regarding the Ned Flanders.
Ned Flanders, yeah. So the idea, it's like a TV trope thing where like Ned Flanders originally was this kind of like quiet, meek neighbor who's into Christianity, and then so it's this idea of taking this small character trait and really like it evolving to like consume their entire character. So like Ned Flanders in later seasons is like solely about, you know, Jesus and stuff. Similarly, like Kevin from The Office, if you watch the first season or two, he just kind of talks slow and occasionally says something dumb, but by like later seasons, he's just like the dumbest person you've ever met. Anyway, I think this is happening to, and it's not even good or bad, Flanderization, but I think it's happening to Morty with jerking off.
So you're saying they're just leaning too much into one element of the character, you're saying?
I wouldn't even say too much, because again, like Flanderization is not necessarily bad, but they've definitely, like, this is a choice to just be like, Morty's just a dude who's jerking off all the time. He's 14. It tracks with this character.
I would say it tracks with his character. I don't think they're overdoing it. I mean, it certainly doesn't define him. There are certainly a lot of other things that Morty does and a lot of other things you can describe about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also, he's one of the main characters, whereas Flanders, I mean, I assume this applies mainly to smaller characters who, when, you know, that's their one thing when they're on screen, but there's way more than him just jacking off. But yeah, I like it. I don't think it's overdone at all. It cracks me up every time they bring it up.
Yeah, I don't think it's overdone. That's an interesting term, though. I had not heard of Flanderization.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
When I thought you said Philanderization, which I was like, oh, it's like making somebody become a philanderer. Go on.
Yes. I also just loved all the Pornhub jokes about Morty having a Pornhub account. That's all I want to say.
All right, we're going to head into the voicemails. If you want to send us a voicemail, the number is 213-534-8807 or 21-ELFHUT07. We're the Elf's Party. We got one from Ryan. Let's listen to Ryan.
Oh, cool name.
Hey, Squanchers. It's Ryan here. Just wanted to give my thoughts real quick on the most recent Rick and Morty episode. Honestly, I thought it was really anxiety-inducing. I didn't not enjoy the episode, but with all of the meta humor, I constantly am reminded of the anxiety and concern that the writers have about the quality of the show going forward, and it makes me less comfortable because I share those fears. I sympathize with that. I'm already feeling like this season. The fourth season is not as good as past seasons. I feel like, you know, especially with having a few seasons yet to go, it just seems to me like the quality is going to continue to drop, and the anxiety about that is already so great that they can't help but share it with us, and it makes me concerned. Anyway, that's all. You guys are great. Bye.
That guy sound concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that the episode is anxiety-inducing, but I don't know, I have a kind of unique relationship to watching the episode because when I was watching that episode, usually while I'm watching it, I try to take notes to be able to at least get the recap written down by the time I'm done watching it the first time. And in that episode in particular, it was just a nightmare trying to come up with like what exactly is happening in this episode from beat to beat. But yeah, I mean, I honestly, on a whole, think that this season has been pretty good. I don't see it as a huge drop in quality. What do you guys think?
Me neither. I think there's gems in there. There's some that are kind of like the last one, a little too clever and overwritten for their own good. But to touch on what he's talking about specifically, I mean, I kind of touched on this in the last podcast, but like, I personally am super over the going hard into Dan and Justin acknowledging the fans and the show and the quality or people's expectations. To me, I mean, like it's fun for a gag here and there, but kind of like really making that the meat of an episode. I'm just kind of like, guys, get over it. Like there's always going to be people complaining about the show. Fuck them. Who gives a shit? There's always going to be people complaining the show's not as good as it used to be. Fuck those people too. You know, who cares? Like, as long as they keep churning out the good hits like this one, the Prometheus one, like, people like me are going to be totally happy, and that's the attitude I think they should be going with. Not like every couple episodes being like, look, I know we got an expectation. I know people, want, this Rick and Morty, but we just got to do our Rick and Morty. It's like, all right, we get it. That's my opinion take on it.
I think they have to limit the amount that their writers are able to look on the internet to see what people are talking about, because I just don't think it helps them.
No.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Let's hear from Chris.
Hey, Squanchers, what's squanching? It's Chris here. Just listening to your Rick and Morty episode, and at the end of it, you questioned why Christ was like, hey, I'm going to do what I always do and get the hell out of here. Kind of wonder what that was about. To me, that read is like every time a tragedy happens or something really bad or fucked up happens, the first question out of everybody's mouth is typically like, where was God? What was going on? Why would he let this happen? And it's dumb. It's probably not where they were going with it, but that's kind of how I read it, and that's really all I got to say. Take it easy, guys. Love what you do. Bye.
Interesting. I always saw this as more of an ascension joke. What did you guys think?
I like the interpretation that's like something bad's happening, gotta get the fuck out of here. Not my that
not my problem.
Yeah.
Funny. All right, let's move on to hear from Jukebox.
Hi, Wisecrack. This is Jukebox. I just want to give my thoughts on your latest episode of Rick Die, Rick Pete. Basically, I just saw this whole episode as like a middle finger to the hardcore Rick and Morty fans, not ones like you guys who appreciate the jokes and the philosophy and the thinking that goes into it, but the people who obsess over the lore of the show. And it almost seemed to me that like the episode was saying that like the greatest enemy Rick and Morty has is its story lore or story lord. So I don't know if that was a bad pun. I didn't hear anyone kind of pick up on that either. Just wanted to throw that idea out there. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Peace.
I think that was it. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So he was talking about Rick Die Repeat, which is actually the first episode of this season, but it seems like he meant the most recent one. I would agree that people obsessed with the lore are probably not helping. Well, look, people can obsess about lore all they want. I don't really care. But I think it's when the show creators are obsessed about the people obsessed about the lore, like Ryan was saying. I think that's when it kind of becomes a problem. But look, you can't stop people from appreciating the show the way that they want to. So I think you should probably just move on.
Yeah, for me, it's less people. You can analyze a show all you want. Like that's what we we do that every week here. It's more just like when people are talking about the quote unquote toxic fans, it's the loud assholes, I guess, on Reddit and stuff that'll take the lore and then just argue about it or something. Honestly, I rarely see the where these so-called these infamous fans are being so toxic all the time.
Oh,
I guess it's just kind of it's like a one asshole here or there. It's like that's in every
sure yeah
culture,
no, it's a small quantity, but
right.
they're hard
Why
to.
Are they so...
They're the loudest. For instance, they might send emails that aren't like, hey, like, here's my respectful criticism. They'll be like, do your job better. I saw this video on the internet.
Yeah, that was one guy,
we get like discussion. 100 nice emails, and we get one, I'll keep my mouth shut.
And we're not going to make an episode about that, and Justin and Dan shouldn't either.
Okay. Anyway, so that's it for the voicemails. You can hit us up over email at squanch@wisecrack.co. Let's go into the emails. Alec, what do you got for us?
Yeah, and if anyone wants to send us an email, hit us up at squanch@wisecrack.co. That's squanch@wisecrack.co. I also just want a belated shout out to HydroPX for donating live chat. Thank you so much. But anyway, first email's from Gunner. Hey, Knights of the Squanch Table. I like that name. At what point do you think a plotline becomes fan service? Something that really bugs me is when popular plotlines of shows get dubbed fan service when they reach a point of high popularity. I understand how some things that feel like callbacks for the sake of callbacks, such as Mr. Meeseeks and Interdimensional Cable, get wrapped up under the fan service banner, but why do plots such as Evil Morty or Phoenix Bird Person get similar fan service banner? Get a similar rep. I completely understand that this show's creed is we do whatever the fuck we want, Mother Squanchers, and I subscribe to that, but I wonder why the possible hate on their plotlines when it's Dan and Justin's baby. Unless they're into killing their babies, no judgment here. Curious as what you guys think. Keep calm and Morty on.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of do think that they did kill their babies in this last episode, just in the sense that they've already called out Phoenix Person and Evil Morty as toxic fan service in some way, so that I don't know if maybe that's them just killing it off and calling it that and saying, you know what, it's kind of ruined for us in our minds, so we're not actually going to have a Phoenix Person episode, or we're not actually going to continue on the legacy of Evil Morty because we're just so fed up with the fan base. That's one way to do it. I kind of hope that they don't do that. Once again, if there's one theme going through the mailbag voicemail of this episode of the podcast, is that don't let the fans dictate what you do. And if
amen, brother.
Yeah, I mean, if the fans want Phoenix Person too badly and that ruins it for you, then you just got to stop listening. You know, your show is so popular that there's no way that you can listen to all the fans and still please them all. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, we've also been sort of writing and talking about fan service a little bit, like in our What Went Wrong Star Wars video we just put out. But I think the key distinction is, or one of the key distinctions is, bad fan service, or maybe just all fan service, like doesn't really drive the plot in like a good dramatic way. It's literally just there to be like, oh, I recognize that person. And so to make up an example, if they just cram Mr. Meeseeks in an episode for like a cheap joke, I think that's a little bit of fan service. But to Gunner's point, like Evil Morty as a plotline or Phoenix Person as a plotline, I don't necessarily think that's necessarily always fan service unless it's just like a cheap joke that's crammed in there or a quick cameo or something like that. And so I don't even think people who want to see more of that is necessarily like the toxic fan culture or whatever. I mean, personally, like I would love to see more Evil Morty, like I like the serial components of the show and I'd love more of that. If they don't do that, I'm not going to send them hate mail. I'm not going to tell them to do their job better, but I'd like to see it.
Here's the thing I'll say about that is like the whole name Evil Morty, that wasn't thought of by Dan or Justin. That was what the fans dubbed it as, and now probably Dan and Justin only see him as Evil Morty, and I imagine that there's probably something a little bit maybe frustrating about that, in that when you have this prosumer society as well as a society where communication between the creator and the audience is kind of ubiquitous, it's very possible. I mean, obviously they're very aware of how people talk about their show on the internet. There is a sense that the show is almost being taken away from them. If all of a sudden this maybe one-time gag of a Morty with an eye patch all of a sudden becomes this huge sprawling theory that the entire internet is glommed onto and then dubbed Evil Morty. So they now have to deal with something that perhaps they hadn't even thought about.
Sure.
And I can kind of see how that can get a little frustrating.
Totally.
You're telling me that their show is so popular that people want to see their favorite shit in it? You know, like
no, I'm not.
I
saying,
feel so shitty for them.
I'm saying,
just kidding.
I'm saying that the show is so popular that the fans are almost writing the show for them in a weird way that they're frustrated by.
Which is a good problem to have, I would say.
I would say
overall,
it's a good problem to have too.
Honestly, my last little take on the toxic fan culture, it's just that every super cult show has a fan base, right? And this fan base, unlike others, it's just that, who do you hate more? The person who thinks they're really, really smart and smug about it, right? You know, like a person that's obsessed with Full House isn't going to necessarily be that characterization of a person, but someone that's in the Rick and Morty, it's like that, since the show is about being, about smart stuff, clever stuff, I think it kind of goes back to that copy pasta that you've talked about and discussed. It's kind of like that's the core essence of the toxic Rick and Morty fan, is just someone who thinks it's like, you just don't fucking get it, man. You don't get my favorite cartoon. It's just too smart for you. And I think that's when people are talking about the toxic Rick and Morty person. That's
Totally.
the phantom person they're talking about, which I rarely meet that person in real life, to be honest.
Yeah. I rarely meet any of the horrible people I see on the internet,
Yeah. So does that mean, do they exist? Is it a media creation, or what's going on here?
Maybe they exist, but they're like
we
Gerald
move
from
on.
they're like Gerald from South Park in that they have a double life that they're living. So maybe you have met these
Okay.
people, but they just act differently on the internet.
That's probably true.
Yeah. All right, what else we got, Alec?
Here is an email from Andre who says, "Hey, Squanchers, just want to throw some general thoughts about season 4 to answer a question posed by Jared about why people possibly don't like this season. While I do like this season so far, I feel it's missing the strong character development of seasons prior. Moments like Beth's choice in ABCs of Beth or therapy in Pickle Rick. Now, to be fair, they have been renewed for 70 episodes. Maybe they're trying to pace this stuff out. That's totally fine with me and makes total sense. In the end, maybe that's just the meta commentary of Never Rick and Morty, a plea for time and not just, we don't care about what you do. Because if that's true, it feels weird for this show. A show whose best episodes are rooted in its character development and world building. Anyway, that's all I got. Really tried to keep this short."
Wasn't it 70 seasons, not 70 episodes?
Did I?
Am I
He said
crazy?
No, it's 70 episodes, 70
Sorry,
seasons.
they said
yeah,
said
right.
70 episodes. I maybe fucked up and said seasons. Sorry for making you sound dumb, Andre.
I mean, 70 episodes is also sounds like a joke though too.
No, they have been renewed for 70 episodes.
Yeah.
That's such a large and arbitrary number.
I mean, when you have the numbers that they had for their season 3, you can command a lot. So, but yeah, to his point, actually, you know what? I got nothing.
I like the point. I think this is what I feel about this season is like, I don't dislike the season. I'm enjoying it through and through. But when I think about the episodes that make me like warm and fuzzy inside, maybe this current episode will do that in the future. But I like Snake Jazz, but I'm not like, man, I could rewatch Snake Jazz right now. Not like Citadel of Ricks, which is one of the greatest episodes.
Okay, I lied. I do have something to say.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the season, I think it was like episodes 1, 2, and 3 of season 4, there was at least a small kernel of character movement that was going on. Like at the end, I'm going to mix up the exact episodes that I'm talking about, but essentially the overall message character-wise was like Rick misses Morty, or Rick wishes that Morty would go on more adventures with him. That small nugget is something that I am missing a little bit from at least these past 2 episodes, because in terms of the relationship between Rick and Morty, it's become pretty static, which is fine. To Alec's point, they've got 70 more episodes. They probably do want to stretch it out a little bit, but it was nice in the beginning of the season to kind of come away with a little thing of like, Rick will do this whole Inception level heist just to keep Morty around instead of writing a screenplay. It's kind of touching, and I do miss that a little bit, but again, I'm sure we're going to see more of it.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I kind of do like they're always very good about doing the soft serialization thing, and I wish that they'd kind of drop a few of those in these episodes too, because it seems kind of one-offs right now.
Yeah. Let's do one more email, Alec.
I don't know if I can, honestly. I gotta get running.
Okay. All right.
Unless it's short or something.
No, this one's
I don't
medium.
want to rush us.
Sorry about that. Oh, sorry, this one is short. One from Joseph, I'll read it really fast. When you mention the room full of Rick's past lovers, you talk about one of them being of the same species as Yoda. My guess is the joke is that it's a female of the species and Rick had sex with her and made baby Yoda. Love it.
Oh, okay. All right. I like that.
Bam, take
Good
that,
little Easter egg
Disney.
there.
All right, we will see everybody next week, but before we go, where can we find you guys on the internet, Ryan?
YouTube.com @Ryan Shorts, or go watch my game show I made in my garage, Ryan's Game Show. Release shorts every week, though. See you there.
And Alec.
On Twitter at WisecrackAlec.
Oh, yeah, at Ryan's Game Show on Twitter, too.
Cool. All right, well, we'll see everybody next week for Rick and Morty Season 4, Episode 8. Until then, wubba-lubba-dub-dub, everybody.
Yeehaw.
Wubba-lubba-dub-dub from Hollywood, California. This has been the Squanch!